Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Therese. Anne is doing some extremely positive work, so I'm excited to have her on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. The Unlock Wellness podcast is now on patreon.com. Patreon is an amazing site that allows you to support your favorite podcasts. So whether it's $1 per month or 10 or 20, it's an amazing way to help support the Unlock Wellness podcast. If you're unable to support at this time, I still love you. The podcast will always be free, but the podcast has been growing a lot, and using Patreon will help me slowly improve recording equipment so I can get you guys the best sound quality possible, as well as help decrease the need to use sponsored ads in the episodes. I'm definitely not against sponsorships by any means, but I do respect your time as listeners, and I don't want to have to overload the podcast with a bunch of ads. So if you do want to support using Patreon, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Dr. Casey Johnson. There's even fun incentives for supporting, like shirts and stickers, so be sure to check it out. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnsson. You can also check out my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, also be sure to check out the Shop tab, where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series and learn about the Unlock Wellness Project, which supplies a wellness bag to a child in need for each book purchased. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Therese. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Therese. And Anne is co-founder of Role Models Management, an ethical talent and model agency. She's also host of the Hey Change podcast and is just doing so much positive work. So I'm extremely excited to hear her story. And big shout out to past podcast guest Bradley Jared for connecting me with Anne. Brad's story is also amazing as well. So be sure to go back and check it out on his episode in episode 136. So Anne, just thank you so much for taking time to come on. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And, we'll just jump into your backstory. First off, where you're from and what your health and wellness looked like at a young age and really just how that's progressed over time.
Wow. Okay. So I'm originally from Sweden. Hence the accent. That's going to come out soon if you haven't heard it already. But yeah, so I grew up in Sweden on the West Coast with my family. I would say a very healthy upbringing. We were always out hiking, going on like bike vacations over like taking that touristy flight down to Spain, which we did also. But most of our time we were outdoors. We loved nature. I was a big like tomboy growing up. I would like kicking balls with the kids, with the guys, and going fishing with my brother and my dad. I played a lot of sports growing up. I was big into soccer and would like play hoops with my brother with basketball. I did like table tennis and karate and all those kinds of different combinations. So I grew up a very like active and healthy child. And from that, naturally, I developed a big passion for food. I ate a lot and I still do, but, always loved being active and eating a lot. And then as I grew older and I was, heading into my teenage years, and of course, all sports I was doing was more and more becoming on like a more advanced level. So they all required a lot more of my time, and I had to like set myself down and say, okay, you have to focus on one thing. You can't continue like doing 10 hours a week in all different sports. So I decided to quit, soccer and karate and all that and just focus on my guitar playing, which is also doing, and my part-time job. But so with that said, I went from doing a lot of sports to no sports. And in a very short amount of time, I actually gained some weight. And being 13 and, heading into puberty and caring a lot for your body and your looks and what guys might think of you and whatnot, that really made me think about what I was eating. And it was the first time I was reflecting on food that way, and I found myself becoming obsessed with fitness and health and food, and I would say in a very early age.
Was it a good obsession or was it an unhealthy obsession?
Well, I think it's good and bad looking back now, because I'm gonna also go into that more. But I mean, I think I wanted to obviously be healthy, but then also, as with any obsessions of that age, maybe not so healthy because it was from a body image perspective that I wanted to eat certain ways. But then also, I mean, if I compare with my friends, they would go home after school and eat like a big bag of chips and like, cookies and whatnot. And I would like, munch on my carrots or something else healthy. And I was very, very careful with what I was eating and got almost bullied for it, honestly, because, other people of my age just wasn't struggling with their metabolism as I was. It kicked in way later. And so I was always grateful that it did kick in so early because it really taught me how to live a healthy and balanced life early on. And today I'm like honestly craving completely different foods than most others from that. But then also another thing that happened kind of simultaneously was that I was very tired certain parts of the year. And so I went to my doctors and tried to figure out what was wrong with me. Like I couldn't keep my eyes open. It was just like summer hit and I was out. And so they took a lot of blood tests and stuff and tried to figure out. Didn't try too hard, which I was a little bit upset about. I think they could have been trying harder to help me, but they just said that you're a teenager, you're going through a phase. It's normal to be tired. I later on actually went to a homeopath who told me I was allergic, so that made a lot more sense. But anyways, back to the regular doctor. What they did do though was they took a lot of blood tests and they found that my blood sugar was rising a lot from just eating any kinds of food. So if I went in before I had breakfast and after breakfast, I can see a big difference in my blood sugar levels. So they told me that, from that I was running a risk of getting diabetes too, and that I should be careful with foods, especially sugars and carbs that have a lot of hidden sugars in it. So, obviously, since I was already so obsessed with foods, I was like trying to really figure out what was my way of eating, what should I be eating, how can I balance my blood sugar better. Kind of developed as sensitivity for gluten, which I still have. Is coming back to me more, but I thought I was gluten intolerant. I was trying not to eat any sugars, no carbs whatsoever. I went through a lot of different extremes in diets, and for each diet I told myself and everyone around me that this was the healthiest, most balanced version of myself. Looking back now, I know that wasn't really the truth, and I kind of knew deep inside also, but I think I really desperately needed something to follow, just some kind of like guideline to tell me like eat this and not that.
Right.
Everything that the doctors told me were like, well, just listen to your body, try to figure it out. And I was just like sick of trying to figure things out.
And you're so young too. Most people at that age, they can't fully comprehend all of that. It's you don't really understand everything, because for example, you and I both now, like we've both researched all of this so much over the years. But that took so much time. And at 13, I knew nothing about nutrition, or however old you were at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I may have been 14 or 15 at this point, and then also like the whole like trying to live different worlds, because obviously I wanted to go to parties and just, binge and eat chips and whatnot. And always followed by this like shame the next morning. So I wouldn't say I had an eating disorder, but I would definitely overeat and then just feel shameful about it. So I guess that's some kind of overeating too. But yeah, it was hard. I mean, I just kind of wanted, I've always wanted to be happy, which is another part of myself. So I hated not feeling well. And I wanted some kind of simple answer to my problems and someone to just tell me that this is the new super diet that's going to save all your problems and you can continue living like this forever. And I guess that diet kind of came later on as I started going more plant-based. But, there were times when I would just go low carb, high fat, and all I was eating was egg and dairy and bacon and fats and heavy creams, and thought that was the healthiest way possible for me to live.
Were you like losing weight through that process of just trying to be more aware of what you were putting in?
N- no. I mean, this was also a time when I wanted to like build muscle mass. So I was like going to the gym and like downing all these protein shakes and stuff. So it was more important for me to like get a little bulky. Not like big, but like I wanted definitely to have muscles. And I mean, I'm a lot, leaner now, if that's answering your question. So I think, I mean, I did lose that weight. I added on when I first quit all my sports. Like I got back into my regular shape and tried to keep that shape for a long time. Like I became super active on my own. Like I've always been, what would you say? Like I've never had issues with going to the gym and finding that motivation because I've always had that inner motivation to like wanting to stay active and fit. So I'm not doing sports, but I am always working out. And so yeah, I mean, I think my physical shape has always been important. Now, when I'm older and more, when I've landed more in myself and my self-confidence, I think my physical appearance is still very important, but for completely different reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's, in one sense, it's a very regular story for any teenager, but then also maybe mine was more infused with food and nutrition than many others, maybe.
Right. So like as you progressed over time with just trying to be aware of what you're putting in your body, obviously you're staying active. When did like did you have somebody that recommended going more plant-based, or how did that whole, aspect of the way you ate and lived fall into place there?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question because that's an interesting one. When I was in this whole low carb, high fat, super heavy protein babe, whatever you would call her, she went to the gym every single morning and would like routinely follow what she ate and counting every calorie and all the protein and stuff. I was that summer actually working for this iron factory, which is hilarious in itself, but I need to make some money because I wanted to go to New York. So I was working there, and this one guy at the factory was telling me like, hey, I know I can tell you're very into like health and nutrition and all that. Why don't you eat more plant-based? And no one had ever asked me that question before because I grew up in a family where like no one's ever been vegan or vegetarian around me. So I never had that viewpoint of it. Like, even the introduction to that world has never been there before. So I remember him asking that question and it just really sat with me. I didn't know why, but it really touched me deep inside. And then I was sitting on this floor, vacuuming iron powder, because that's what I did. I was super hot, but I was like thinking like, why do I eat animals? Like, how is it that I eat animals? And it was just like this continuous question over and over and over inside of me. And then I decided that I had to pick up on this and I wanted to read some books on it and like maybe watch some documentaries. And as I did, I was just appalled by the fact that I thought I wanted to be this, environmental activist, and I was so compassionate and I loved animals, always loved animals. And then suddenly here I was being a hypocrite because I've been eating animals my entire life. And now when I knew all this thing about the industry and the cruelty that goes into it, I knew that I had to make a change somehow. But I was terrified because, I thought I had built this system for myself where I was safe. Like as long as I follow these calories intake and, eat this amount of protein and go to the gym this many hours a week, I was safe there. So it was very scary for me to even think about, breaking that world apart and start over. So I knew that I had to seek help. And I actually asked my mom and dad to help me to get some money to go to a real nutritionist in town. And he sat down with me and listened to all my concerns and was like, hey, Therese, we can figure this out. You're in good hands. And I told him that maybe I just want to start with like going, meat-free Monday or like just switch out one meal a day or something, just cut down. And he told me that, yeah, let's start with this. I have made a meal plan for you, but just have it as your long-term vision that one day you're going to be fully plant-based. And I hadn't even asked him for that. I was like, wait a second, that's not what we talked about. But he told me that please just don't worry about the protein. Go home and erase that whole thought about having to have a certain amount every day. Try not to stress about it. Delete that app you're using and then just have it as your goal to slowly transition over to this new life and see how it feels and see how you, how you might want to, discover that world even deeper. So I did that, and it took me from that day. It took me 3 months to going fully vegan, and since then I've never looked back. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's a really cool story. I mean, just the fact that that guy brought it up to you. Isn't it cool how you can go, just like a statement like that can change how you think about everything so quickly? Like it's
oh
like
my God,
the way it removes the blinders, and then all of a sudden it's such common sense, and you're like it just blows your mind, right?
I mean, I love that, because now I'm sometimes like, maybe I should just shut up. I shouldn't say anything. But then I try to remember, like, well, if that guy had never said anything to me, I
Right.
wouldn't be where I am today. Sometimes maybe I am that one person she needs to hear say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, for
Because
sure.
he didn't say it like in an offending way. It was like, hey,
No.
you should just check it out. And you
Mm-hmm.
did. So no, that's amazing. I love that. So it took you a few months. Obviously you had pretty good support from your friends and family, right?
I mean, yes and no. I actually had a lot of haters that would just continuously question me for what I did. Like, people would like make up stories that they worked for this slaughterhouse on parties. Like, I'm not kidding.
That's
I had
crazy.
yeah, and I'm like, why am I sitting here defending myself for the choices I'm making? But no, friends, my close family definitely was there to support me. But then there's always been, I think, with any kind of change you go through, you have to realize that there will be some resistance from society and from, people around you. I think less so now than before, probably, because society is changing in general. So people are more just accustomed to it, I feel.
Right.
It's more common nowadays. But yeah, I mean, I was fortunate. I've always gotten the best support from my family. So that was an easy one, I guess.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, people are always going to have their opinion just because they're not where you are yet. It just takes some time, and like they just don't understand.
Yeah, I
But
think it's about fear.
yeah, no, definitely 100%. So you started making those changes. So like, what were some of, I guess, immediate changes you felt, and then just long-term, how that's really just affected you overall?
Well, so I think some immediate changes was I didn't feel that many changes in terms of my physical body, which was pretty my biggest aha moment, right? Because I was so terrified I was going to lose all my muscle mass and whatnot, and then like not being able to perform as well at the gym. I realized fairly early that nothing of that changed, and I actually took like a then and still picture instead of like then and now, and so I could like compare my body. I looked like exactly the same. The biggest change I felt, however, was my spiritual transformation, and I just became so much lighter, and I got all this joy, and I really felt it to be so joyful to eat every single meal. I got a lot more energy because that following spring I was moving to New York as I had planned, and I did my internship, and I was working part-time and babysitting and had all these like things I wanted to do, and I was getting home late and wanting to, of course, also go out on the weekends and stuff, but I was doing all these things and I had all this extra energy I hadn't experienced before. So I did some research, like I do, control freak as I am, and found out that when you eat a lot of heavy like meat heavy and dairy heavy foods, your stomach needs a lot of energy to process that food. So if you're not eating that, you get the energy to just use however you want. And so that was kind of cool to me that, this is just an extra added plus to it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that was the biggest change, just like the energy inside and like the soul feeling of doing something that finally aligning my values to my actions. And knowing that, I think I've always been an environmental activist. Like I said, I've always cared for the planet. And then finally, I found a way that I can easily make a change every single day with every single meal I'm eating. And that was a big part of it for me.
Definitely. I mean, when you're congruent and in line with your choices, that's when all of those amazing things can really start to happen, right? It's when you get all of those things in a line. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also, I feel like going vegan, like so my entire teenage life, like I said, I was just so, for lack of a better word, mind fucked, because I had to like have so much control over everything I was eating. And it might sound contradictory that now when I'm like actually cutting out so many foods from my life, that I have more freedom, but I don't have to I don't have to always think about the amounts of food I'm eating, because I feel like I can eat more now than I ever have. And if I'm hungry, I'm eating. Like, that's just it. There's no other, I just my body knows what it wants. And I've gotten a lot better at just listening to what makes me feel good. And there are times when I'm craving coffee like a crazy person. And then some days I just don't want coffee at all. And if I don't want coffee, I'm not going to force myself a cup of coffee. And I've learned that the body is so smart. And so as long as you're feeding it like whole foods that you know are beneficial for both you and the planet, just listen to it. If you're still hungry, then eat something more. If you're not hungry, you don't have to eat. Like, it's just, I think it's just about that. It's not the game. It's just about being your body's best friend, if that makes sense.
It does. And I love that you said that, because I think that's something that people that may be iffy if whether they're not they're going to try this way of eating is because they feel like they're going to be restricted, like they can't enjoy eating and time with their friends and like things like that. When in fact, like you just said, it's the complete opposite. Like, you do have the freedom because you can eat whenever you want and you don't have to feel bad about it. It's pretty cool when you don't have to count calories or be concerned with this and that, because if you're eating whole foods, your body knows how to process it and will give you the energy that you need and sustain the weight that you need to sustain. So it's definitely been like the best decision for me as well. But I love hearing that from guests as well, but just because I think people listening that may be questioning it, it's important for them to hear it.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah.
And like also understand that everyone is so different. Like, I always make the example, like me, my business partner, we're both vegans, but we come from so different backgrounds that every time I go visit her, she cooks for me and I always come back feeling a little bit unbalanced because we just eat so different foods, and I need a lot more like heavy protein-based foods like nuts and stuff, where she can't eat nuts. So it's really interesting. But I think like just understand that it's a journey, and not like just learn to listen to your body and decide for yourself that you want to feel the best you can possibly feel, and then just make it an adventure and continue on.
Definitely. And with the type of work you do, and it's obviously a very creative one, and you were talking about how you played guitar growing up. Like, do you feel that making the switch has increased just your creativity overall, the clarity, the focus that you need to really create?
Oh, that's a big one. Well, it's interesting you bring up the guitar playing, because actually school came very easy for me. It was never hard for me to get good grades. And so that's how people would like reward me. And like growing up, my parents and my grandma and grandpa would always be like, oh, congratulations on your amazing grades and stuff. However, I've been writing music since I was like 7. I wanted to write a book when I was 8. I've always been very creative, and it was always that side of me that was more important to me. So now I think I would say actually now, just when you're asking the questions and reflecting back on things, going plant-based opened up a whole new awareness in my life of that you can actually create your own reality. And it's more important than anything else to really feel good, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. So whatever you do, whatever food you eat, whatever career you choose for yourself, you have to always reflect on what is going to make me feel best. And I always knew that if I were to pursue something within like a business career, I have a business degree in college too. And I'm using that now for my creative work. So I'm not saying I'm regretting anything, but I'm trying to piece together all the different parts of my past to now create this reality that I have today. And it's definitely a very creative profession. But then also on the back end of that is always all the emails is going to be have to be responded to, and like technical issue with the website. I, for some reason, ended up the IT guy at our company. I don't know why, but I've managed it so far. But I definitely think that, being vegan opened up a whole new mindset to me.
That's awesome. And I mean, and then obviously it opened up just the whole ethical side of it, which basically is your business. So do you want to talk about exactly what Role Models is, what you guys do, and just kind of lay it all out?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it was after I went vegan, I was so high in life and like, on energies, and like I want to help people further understand how awesome it is to be vegan and how awesome it feels to be able to help save the planet with every meal, with every decision you make. And then after being vegan, of course, that further my interest into the clothing industry and how that works out. And zero waste. I moved to New York and I was just like appalled by all the plastic waste everywhere, and that really sparked my interest. But as I just continuously being more and more aware about things in our surroundings and in our society. And going to school in New York for marketing, I learned that, from installing fear in people, you don't really get any action. So if you want to do like an advertising campaign, for example, that you want people to get to action, you want to instill hope and positivity and to tell people like, this is what's already going on. This is how you can help. And so that was really intriguing to me. And I always wanted to use my way of advertisement and marketing to do something good. And I thought, if we can trick people into drinking soda, we can probably also trick them into doing great stuff in this world.
Right.
And so at the same time, I wanted to really have a voice to speak with, and thought to myself, okay, I'm a nobody. I have no followers on Instagram. No one gives a shit about what I'm saying. So how can I change that? And for some reason, I think within like a span of a week, 3 people asked me on the street if I was modeling, and I was like, no, I'm not. And then I'm like, maybe I should be modeling. So I, like I always do, made myself a model. I reached out to people on Instagram, some photographers, I built my portfolio, and then I went to all these go-sees and different agencies in New York, and then for some reason got signed with one of New York's agencies and found myself being sent out to castings and going to photo shoots, and, actually was part of this TV show that you might have heard of, Project Runway.
That's just a little show, just a small show.
It's a little show.
Not a big deal. That's really cool though.
Yeah, I had to pinch myself when I got that job, to be honest. But it was cool. And then I was just immersed in this modeling world. But then I was still lacking the whole mission behind it, which was like I wanted this platform with a voice to speak with and to educate and inspire. And I also want to work with brands that I believed in, that I can align myself with. And my agency just didn't care about that at all. And I realized that was just the norm, like that was just how things were in this industry. So the idea of my own ethical agency started to like bubble on the surface. And then I started talking about it to some people, and I got introduced to my now partner, Belle, in LA. And we had one phone call and talked about it. And we said, let's make it happen. So that's how we started. The idea of the agency is to redefine what it's like to be a model. And so with us, they're not just another pretty face and an ad, but they're like powerful individuals with a voice to speak with and who are super passionate within their field of passion. So if it's about human rights or animal rights or sustainable fashion or whatever it might be, we want to see that person who's in our board is actively working to influence other in this field of passion. So it's been a really rewarding journey since then. We got launched in early 2017. And we got almost not daily, but weekly for sure. We get new submissions from models reaching out to us, and they want to be with us because of the mission we're on. And it's pretty cool to see that it wasn't just me who felt this way, and a lot of other models and talents and dancers and whatever they might be wants to use their social platform to inspire others and do good.
That's awesome. No, I love that. And I mean, I'm just excited to see how you guys grow, because it's especially in that type of industry where obviously I'm not in that industry, but just by what people I talk to, obviously a lot of mortals go out the door in that aspect. So kind of bringing that back is I just think it's just really important and amazing.
Yeah, I think a lot of things are happening, especially with also like the Me Too movement last year. And I think brands too, they just want to work with real people and share real stories. And they're starting to realize the value in being associated with people and stories like that, especially with social media, where today, like any celebrity, they have a voice now. Yeah. So, whatever they do, it's going to directly reflect back on the brands they're working with. So I think if a brand is all about sustainability, they should be working with someone who's all about that too.
Right. And there's so many brands that are jumping on board. I know you've noticed it. I talked about this a little bit in Brad's episode, but a lot of these bigger companies are switching things that they use. Like a lot of, major fashion companies are getting rid of fur. And I like I mentioned in his episode, I think it was like Hugo Boss is making shoes made out of pineapple to replace leather in one of their lines. Like, I just think that that's really amazing, just because that's where the demand is. And obviously because people just care more now, so it's cool just seeing how that movement is growing. And I'm sure you see it just like a million times more just being in it,
It's a very exciting time for fashion in general, because I see all the changes, and I think it's just also just tapping the surface so far. So within the next few years, there's going to be a lot happening.
For sure. And, you do have a podcast as well, which is really cool. on the Hey Change podcast. So what made you want to start that in the first place?
Similar idea, I guess. I just wanted somewhere to speak my voice, and I always had this inner drive to wanting to help others, and I used to be more forceful in it. My poor parents had to like watch all these movies and listen to me talk, but
I think everybody goes through that, but yeah.
Oh gosh, my mom and dad, how can you not realize this is how you're supposed to live your life?
Right.
Anyways, everyone have their own journey, and I soon realized that I need to like lead and not force people. Like you can't push someone over the edge, but you can be a good example, and you can talk about your own experiences, and hopefully someone else is going to be inspired and wanting to try that out for themselves. So I started blogging first, realized that I didn't have enough time for it, and I was myself listening to a lot of podcasts and thought that, maybe I should just start podcasting. And maybe that was how you felt about it too. But I just felt it so rewarding to talk about some things I've been going through, and then also connect with other people that are doing awesome things. And so the podcast is called Hey Change, and it's basically about spreading positivity and different ways of changing that is fun, because it's also finding happiness in new realities. Like I think people are very afraid of change in many ways, because it is one of the most terrifying things we can do is going through change, but it's also so rewarding. And I just want to create this platform where people can come to and feel inspired to, in any small steps in the right direction, change a little bit about who they are and how they live their lives. And to show them that, it doesn't have to be sacrificing. Like going vegan, for example, doesn't have to be about sacrificing. On the other end, it's actually about gaining a lot of things. But you have to change that mindset. And so if you never start with a mindset, you're never going to get to the next point. So yeah, that's the podcast. And it's fun.
I love that. No, it's just so amazing how many people you can connect with that you never thought that you would connect with. Obviously, we're connected right now. We wouldn't have if it wasn't for a podcast, which is
right.
Really cool. Just based on what you've done so far with your podcast, and what has been maybe something that you've taken away from it, like maybe something a guest has said, or something that maybe has just inspired you in your own personal life?
Oh, wow. I feel like everyone I talk to inspire me somehow. Yeah. I think something that I've taken away from it, and this may not be the answer you're asking for, but because I did this as just like a trial thing. I wanted to try it out and see where it took me. And I think something I've been going through a lot lately is just this frustration of like, why is this not picking up more? Why is not more people listening? And then just this feeling, I think it also because of social media and the ability to compare yourself to so many others, I have come back to the thought and the idea of like, well, why did you want to start this in the first place? Well, I want to have a platform to just use my voice and hopefully inspire other people. So if I happen to inspire one person, isn't that good enough? And it is. So I think that's what I've learned from it. It's like, as long as you do it with the right intention, as long as you keep doing it with passion, there's no wrong way of doing it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because I never went to school for podcasting. I think you haven't either.
Nope.
And there's never going to be like, there's always going to be something you want to improve, which is good. But then also sometimes you have to tell yourself this is good enough. Don't sit up half night trying to fix this one tiny problem, because people will still listen and be inspired. And that's the whole mission with it, bottom line.
Right. And it all comes back to where, the guy that mentioned plant-based to you for the first time, that you may have been the only person he's ever mentioned that to, like that's just one person listening, and look how many people you've been able to impact so far. And you don't know what those people have done, but there's going to be things that happen that you'll never know that you had a connection to, which is really awesome. So it's just like, it's just like you never know who's listening, and you don't know how far reaching that those things can go.
That's so powerful to hear. And also I think something that everyone who has a podcast, or who's a writer, or who's putting any kind of creative work out there, especially with the intention to inspire others, you never know how that other person is going to take that message to heart. And you can never control that. So sometimes I found myself also trying to change the message depending on the listener, but then you can always just bring the message as you want to bring it from your most truth self. And then whoever's supposed to listen to it will listen to it and get whatever message they're supposed to get from it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Because where everybody's at such a different place, the same person can listen to the same episode and their takeaway is something completely different.
Exactly.
Or, I think about this all the time. It's like, I have, a lot of guests on too that maybe have lost hundreds of pounds and now they do like marathons, obviously not everybody listening needs to lose 200 pounds and wants to run a marathon, but the things that they can take away from the person that they had to develop that mind to make that kind of change in their life, anybody can take that and apply it to your life. Like that's just, it's cool. Yeah. Like you were saying, it's just where everybody is going to interpret it differently.
Yeah, and I think it's also very important to remember that as just a regular person, whoever's listening right now, is that other people will always try to advise you, and most times from like their fullest heart, like really trying to help you, but they can always only advise you from their past experience and from their at right now. And so you always have to take it with a little bit of salt and to say, think to yourself that, okay, what can I take away from this? Like, how can I take this advice and apply it to my own story? Then you always have to come back to your own intuition and to really feel like what feels right for you. Because there's so much opinions out there. There's so many, different case studies or articles about eat this, don't eat this, try this, try that. And it can drive you crazy in the end. So I think like just pick pieces from it and then try to make a story for yourself that makes sense for you.
100%. No, that was perfectly said. And, Anne, we talked about your business and your podcast. Is there anything else that you're working on in the future that you just want to put out there and share with everybody, or just continue to work extremely hard and put out a lot of positivity?
Well, so one secret project I can just share real quick, because my newest passion is about the whole plastic waste and trying to reduce that. So I am working on a product that's going to go to market soon that will help you bring your own utensils with you wherever you go. So cool. I'm just going to say that, and it's very early stage, but it's coming soon. So I'm excited.
Perfect. Well, let me know when it's out, and I'll promote on my end as well. So
yay. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. And then, Anne, what is the best way for people to follow you on social media? That way they can keep up with everything that you're doing, your business, your podcast, when your product comes out?
I would say my Instagram for sure. It's Therese Bengtsson. And if that's hard to find, you can just search for the hashtag HeyChange. So that's easier, HeyChange. And then also my website is heychange.net. But Instagram, I would say it's like the best place because that's where I post everything.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll put all of that in the show notes. That way people can just go click and give you a follow, and also your podcast. And yeah, you guys, if you are listening, go check out her podcast, give it a subscribe, give it an awesome review on iTunes, because that always helps a lot. And go support her because she's doing some really awesome work. And just closing question that I ask every guest, but if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it was something that's been your biggest takeaway so far on your own wellness journey, but if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
I would say that appreciate the journey and don't be so stressed out about time and thinking that you have to be a certain place or just have achieved something in a specific time. If that's about your diet, your health, a career, whatever it might be, start your journey and then just learn how to appreciate it as you go. And then be humble with yourself and all the learnings, because that is what makes you who you are, and that makes life that it's supposed to be.
Awesome. No, that's perfect. And just thank you so much for taking time to come on. I really loved having you and excited to see where all of your work goes. So just thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Anne. She's doing so much positive work. So be sure to go give her a follow on social media to keep up with everything that she's been working on. You can find her social media links and our podcast link that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's drkaseyjohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Anne's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Anne, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to check out patreon.com/Dr. Casey Johnson to learn how you can support the Unlock Wellness podcast. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.